Remember the Maharishi, the Beatles guru, the man whose transcendental meditation turned on the hippie generation? Well, he might have faded from general view, but by no means has he been idle. This would-be sage, who believes people can fly, has become a high flyer himself, quietly building a multi-million-dollar empire, a sort of spiritual Amway, selling everything from housing developments to herbal medicines. But all is not well in his kingdom. He's being sued, his cult's been labelled dangerous, and there's growing unease at what he's been up to here in Australia. Can you hear me, see me? Interviewing the Maharishi is a very strange experience. Maharishi, hello. We could hear him in the room upstairs, but this is as close as we were allowed to get, talking via a monitor with faulty sound. Why can't we meet?
It's very difficult. I don't meet new people these days.
Why is that?
Because new people waste my time, that's all. I don't have time to waste anymore. Now, I'm busy, very busy, creating a perfect man.
Now, the Maharishi appears harmless enough, and as gurus go, he's probably the biggest. He now calls on, some would say controls, the minds and money of millions. How many followers do you have?
Countless. I stopped counting.
The man has ruined thousands and thousands of lives, and the effect that he had on my life is horribly immeasurable.
Diane Hendel is one of many angry and disillusioned former followers who believe the only thing the Maharishi is enriching is his own bank account.
He's an evil man. He knows what he's doing. He doesn't care how he's affecting people's lives. He wants their money and he wants power. And does he believe all of his rhetoric? I don't think so.
Diane's nightmare involvement with the Maharishi began when she took a course in Transcendental Meditation as a teenager. It ended with a nervous breakdown after what she describes as years of brainwashing. What do you think when you look back now?
It's ridiculous, and it's sad, and it's pathetic, and it's scary, because I am one of thousands of people, bright young people, who were scammed by one of the greatest con artists of our generation.
While his lieutenants assert the Transcendental Meditation movement is not a fly-by-night cult, given some of the Maharishi's bizarre teachings, you'd have to wonder. This is what the great sage calls yogic flying. You've been into this business for how long?
About 20 years. Before that, I taught school and I had a business.
Right.
And then I went into the TM.
And now you believe you can fly?
I believe I can hop. But what I believe is that if people do this in a group, that world peace will be the immediate consequence. And I feel tremendous bliss. I could do this for hours back and forth.
But why would you?
Why would I? This technique refreshes the mind and the body.
What, bouncing up and down here on these rubber mats refreshes the body?
Yes. Absolutely.
The Maharishi now calls free-thinking Holland his home. Here at this former seminary in the little town of Vlodrop, he's set up his world headquarters. And he's built himself this grandiose edifice. It's no less than a palace. Do you do yogic flying yourself?
Yes.
And how long do you spend off the ground?
Just like them, just a moment.
While the Maharishi remains cloistered away in his palace, much of the day-to-day running of his empire is done by this man, Australian Dr. Bevan Morris.
It's hopping. It's not floating at this point. It's just a hopping phenomenon. You just hop along.
But if you were perfect, you'd be off the ground for a long time.
Yes, yes. Eventually, when the world is a less stressed place, probably there will be a lot of people able to float in the air.
What is needed is the bliss out of transcendental meditation, the joy, the happy mood,
The Maharishi first surfaced in the 60s. He was the man who made meditation mainstream, the Eastern mystic who became a counterculture icon in the West with his message of peace, love and spiritual enlightenment. But it was the Beatles who really put the Maharishi on the spiritual map. They established you in the world.
No, no, forget about it.
No?
Forget about it. The Beatles made me popular in the world. Forget about it.
3 decades on, the Maharishi has learnt the art of raising hard cash as well as consciousness. He now heads a global empire that owns hotels, shops, schools, university campuses, factories and other prime real estate around the world, including Australia.
The Maharishi is essentially the Bill Gates of the spiritual world. He's worth $3.5 billion.
John Knapp was once a Maharishi insider, and he says the man they call the giggling guru is laughing all the way to the bank.
What's interesting is he claims to be a monk who owns nothing, but he has at his own beck and call airplanes, Rolls Royces, palaces on several different continents. They have wealth beyond any understanding.
John Knapp spent 23 years and $250,000 in search of the Maharishi's promised nirvana. He quit the TM movement 4 years ago and now runs a website called Transcendental, which exposes countless other stories of financial ruin and misery wrought by the guru's greed.
In addition, what you have is deep psychological damage to 10 to 20% of the long-term meditators. The movement was sued back in 1986 by a guy named Walter Krupinski, who brought forward a list of 40-some-odd victims of people who had committed suicide or jumped out of windows because they believed they could fly. I mean, it goes on and on.
What about the Maharishi? How far can he fly?
Well, I would imagine Maharishi could fly any distance, but he not in the mode of demonstrating such things to the world, because it's a different thing.
Have you seen him fly?
No, I haven't.
Has anyone seen anyone fly?
I don't know in this generation, but throughout the history of the world, it's been recorded again and again that people have been known to have the ability to actually fly.
It probably won't come as a shock, but Dr. Morris isn't a conventional doctor. He was given his doctorate, for want of a better term, by the Maharishi. The guru has no formal teaching qualifications, but daily he satellites lectures to students at his so-called universities around the world, like this one, the Maharishi University of Management in Fairfield, Iowa.
Where is that sense of security on the computers? Where has it gone? Melted away. Nobody bothers about it.
The university offers degrees in the regular disciplines, business, law and science, and this is where the men come to do their yogic flying. I mean, it's surreal. Students here studying physics who believe they can fly. When you got to the master status, you could turn yourself invisible?
That's the claim, that's the belief.
When you got to the master status, you could walk through walls?
That's the claim, that's the belief, but it's never been demonstrated.
When you got to the master status, you knew everything?
That's the claim.
When you got to the master status, you were invincible?
That's the ultimate one, that you become invincible, you become immortal also. And again, no one's showing that.
Immortal?
Immortal, physically immortal.
Now, all this mumbo-jumbo could be easily dismissed, except that many, many people believe it is science. Also, the Maharishi fields candidates in parliamentary elections. In Australia, his Natural Law Party has contested numerous seats with some unique policies, like its ideas on defence.
We would propose to Mr. Howard that, and we've actually proposed to some of the military leaders of Australia, that it'd be good to take 2 or 3% of the military and have them practice transcendental meditation and yogic flying to act as a prevention wing. When one practices yogic flying, one stimulates or enlivens that basic universal field, and that creates this field effect of consciousness. And that is what neutralizes the cause of war.
Now, if I say that's gobbledygook, rubbish, what do you say to that?
Well, again, I have to say that you have to have the experience of it.
No. I don't have to do a test to convince me that water won't flow uphill, and I'd contend I don't need a test to conclude that what you're saying is gobbledygook and rubbish.
Well, I would consider that to be not the comment of a rational man.
People who think like that are in serious need of help. And it's serious when people with minds that deranged enter into real estate deals with the New South Wales Labor Council, the peak union body here in Sydney. Now, this is amongst the most beautiful of all the Sydney waterfronts, and 53 wonderful acres of it are owned by the trade union movement. Now, in one of those peculiarly sharp Sydney real estate deals, the unions have entered into an agreement with the Maharishi and his followers for them to take over this place and run, of all things, health education here. Soon, it seems, the Maharishi and those other ill people will be flying along this beach courtesy of the trade union movement. How much money are you prepared to pay for the land?
I don't have any money. I don't think of any money. It is the Australians who spend the money, who will do all the money matters. Don't waste my time in all these superficialities. If you have no other proper questions for enlightenment, we stop here. Thank you very much.
But it's very important to Australia who gets hold of that piece of land.
Piece of land is not important for Australia. My teaching is important, through which Australia can become an invincible country. Just now, Australia is a slave of Britain. My transcendental meditation can make Australia invincible. Take this message and stop here.
Okay, tell me, are you able to fly yourself?
I don't want to talk to you.
Why is that? Why is that?
Well, your questions were
He requested,
fantastically
sorry.
stupid.
He requested, he holds the rein, he is being interviewed. He said, stop here, we stop here, that's
Your
all.
questions were
Then you
of
understand
superficiality and crassness that was beyond belief.
Send these people.
Well, I mean, isn't it reasonable to ask if
Stop
he
the
can...
television and
Can't I ask if he can fly?
Yes.
Now you have to leave. All of you should leave from here immediately from this ridiculous interview.
I think, looked at rationally, for most people in Western culture, looked at rationally, there's no question that the TM movement is strictly insane, beginning and end.
Full of rules. Why follow them? New Echo, same planet, different world.
Way, selling everything from housing developments to herbal medicines. But all is not well in his kingdom. He's being sued, his cult's been labelled dangerous, and there's growing unease at what he's been up to here in Australia. Can you hear me, see me? Interviewing the Maharishi is a very... how many followers do you have?
Countless. I stopped counting.
The man has ruined thousands and thousands of lives, and the effect that he had on my life is horribly immeasurable.
Diane Hendel is one of many angry and disillusioned former followers who believe the...
Waste my time, that's all. I don't have time to waste anymore. Now, I'm busy, very busy, creating a perfect man.
Now, the Maharishi appears harmless enough, and as gurus go, he's probably the biggest. He now calls on some would say controls the minds and money of millions. Strange experience. Maharishi, hello. We could hear him in the room upstairs, but this is as close as we were allowed to get, talking via a monitor with faulty sound. Why can't we meet?
It's very difficult. I don't meet new people these days.
Why is that?
Because new people...
Remember the Maharishi, the Beatles guru, the man whose transcendental meditation turned on the hippie generation? Well, he might have faded from general view, but by no means has he been idle. This would-be sage, who believes people can fly, has become a high flyer himself, quietly building a multi-million-dollar empire, a sort of spiritual